Hello, welcome to Object 25 of 100 objects that tell the history and philosophy of Summerhill School. And Object 25, so I'm a quarter of the way through the 100 objects, and this object is going to be a big object, and I'll just show it to you. There it is. The object is, if you can see, it is the student pegboard. You can see it's beautifully done. This in fact is a piece of art called the pegboard, and it was made, I commissioned it, and it was made in the woodwork, and it was finished actually by the students when they went to visit the Bethnal Green Museum of Childhood. So at the museum they met with the member of staff Justin, who came up with the idea of having a pegboard at the school, because in the early 1990s Ofsted had begun to harass Summerhill School by regular sort of inspections nearly every year. And one of the issues they had in the early 1990s was about, did the staff know where the children were, or did the staff know if they were in the school or in town or far away. And Justin came up with the idea of having a pegboard that was taken to the meeting and voted on, and they made a pegboard. And the first pegboard they made, which is a wooden board with wooden pegs that you could move, and you could move them to one area which was in, showing that you were in the school, or one that was out, which meant that you were downtown, which is the shops and things, and you walked there normally, or went by bike. And then the third area was far out, which meant that you were in a local city or town or London or with your parents somewhere. Okay. So that was the pegboard, and the meeting agreed to it, and they created laws in the 1990s, early 1990s, and the pegboard was set up outside, in fact, underneath the stairs that led up to the jazz cafe, which was above the woodwork. So that if you left the house by the door next to the kitchen, you would then walk outside and pass the pegboard on your right, just under the stairs there, and you could change your peg and then continue off across the field to exit the school to walk downtown. But because it was there, there were problems with the wind and rain and things in terms of the care of the pegboard, and eventually it was decided to move it into the corridor inside the doorway of the house. So it's inside, and you still walk past it on your way out of the school, and it was protected there, and it's still there today. Now, the pegboard is the way that we register our children, those that live in the community. So, and Ofsted accepted it, in fact, throughout their inspections, as a satisfactory way of us being aware of whether the children are in school or not. And the rules of it was that a child had to move their peg from in to out before they left the school to go downtown, or they had to move their peg to far out if they were going out with their parents or with a teacher to the local town or to city, or down to London or somewhere. And there have always been issues because children might forget or just may not care, and there were issues also about the fact that when new children who start at Summerhill, they would have to create their peg, was one of the first things they had to do, so that we could know where they were in and out. And sometimes you'd have cardboard pegs instead of wooden ones if the child couldn't be bothered. But most children, new children, were quite excited because it was the first thing they could make in the woodwork. So they'd go to woodwork, and Will would help them, and they could design and paint and cut their own pegs. And I have some pegs here because the work of art, the pegboard I showed you, a lot of the pegs, aren't they nice? A lot of the pegs have been, this is Zoe's, the principal, A.S. Neil's daughter. So they're all different shapes, and normally they have a hole in, and they have to, according to the community rules or laws, they have to have your name clearly on it. And of course these were all done specifically for the work of art. This is a cup of tea or coffee, I think. And then we have traffic lights, all red and green, and we have a lovely cat. So, and we have, oh, this is nice. We have a beautiful tiger. Isn't that a beautiful painting? A miniature of a tiger there. And the girl's name was Tiger. But yeah, and for me it was always, when I arrived at the school, it was a fantastic image that I would use sometimes in terms of talking about the school's philosophy, because the concept of individuality and the concept of children creating themselves and their identities is very much symbolised in a sense by the pegboard and by their children making their own pegs. And in the school, in the children's BBC portrayal of the school, the film and the series produced by children's BBC, CBBC, the pegboard is quite an important image, because the titles, the opening title sequence is the pegboards, which spell Summerhill. They move around an animated pegboard, and then one of the characters, the two main characters, one of them, Maddie, who's a new girl at the school, she makes a lovely peg, and the peg is a book, and it's a wooden carving of a book, and on the cover of the book is Maddie's life, yeah, and it's such a beautiful image, the idea of the book. And it reminds me of Mary Shelley and Mary Wollstonecraft and these great feminist women who saw the fight for freedom for women as being the idea that women have to rewrite their identities and claim them back from the authority of men and propaganda and dogma. And for Maddie, the idea that her peg is a book that is going to be her or is her, and it's like a symbol of a diary of the future kind of thing. It's a wonderful image that really sums up the whole philosophy of children's rights and the humanity of the child, and being allowed space and the right to create themselves. So it's a wonderful image in the children's BBC. And also, within the story, she actually gets very angry because her... well, you have to see it to see the full story, but at one point she gets very angry and she tries to burn her pegs. So she puts it on the fire, a wooden fire outside, and pours sort of turpentine or a flammable liquid on it, and the flames shoot up, and accidentally they catch fire of a banner, and which catches fire, and the fire travels across the banner to a boat that someone's making, and then to the woodwork, and the woodwork is set on fire, which is a rather exciting and tragic moment in the film. Now, the art exhibit called the Pegboard, which you've seen, which was made by the children and by Will in the woodwork, and then finished in the Bethnal Green Museum of Childhood, was exhibited in that museum for a few months in a beautiful glass case, as part just next to where they used to run workshops and things, and get the primary school visitors to gather before they'd show them around the museum. And part of that exhibition I created in terms of the captions and things, and it referred to the children's BBC film, but also to the concept of the register, and the fact that the only one of the main legal documents of any school in the past was the register. This is before the national curriculum. And we have this wonderful book here called Spare the Rod, and it's also a very, very good film, Spare the Rod, and it's written by Michael Croft, who sort of was a teacher, and then once he got enough money from writing his books, he then retired from teaching. But as a teacher, he helped set up, or he did set up, and ran the National Youth Theatre, because he believed in children expressing themselves. And this book is a very interesting book in terms of a narrative of what it is like to be a teacher who believes in the dignity of the children, and yet Everyone in the book is brutalised by the institutional system of the schools, and this is reflected when near the beginning, I think on page 28, he is sitting there in front of his class who are engrossed in maths, and he looks down at the register. So he's a news teacher. He says the class still seemed engrossed in arithmetic, so he, the teacher, studied the register on top of his desk. A pupil's presence was denoted by a downward stroke in red ink, from right to left for morning school, and from left to right for the afternoon session. This variation in the direction of the stroke gave a symmetry to the appearance of the page. Each day of a child's attendance was represented by a small triangle. This appearance was spoilt only by occasional marks for absence, which were made in black ink in the shape of the letter O, and they stood out starkly from their uniform background like a badge of disgrace. Every triangle contained one day in a child's life. How had it been spent? What ground had been won? What value achieved? The triangle gave no answer except that the day had been spent at school. One day brought forth another, and each day was followed by a succession of identical days. Thus a week, a year, a childhood passed away, measured and remembered in the neat triangles of the register. John, the teacher, closed the register and looked at the faces of his class, hoping to find there some living sign of the record which the register denied. So this teacher John sort of learns about the brutality and, in a sense, the dehumanisation of his children, of the students he's teaching, and the dehumanisation of himself through the institutional power that is the structures of the school and the headmaster, and it's an image of the adults being destroyed, let alone the teachers, the children. And it's a very powerful book and a really, really good film. But there you see that, in a sense, that the monotony of those triangles and the red lines, and also the power and authority of the school, that you have to have silence when you call the register, and it's a legal document, and if the students aren't there, then they have to be followed up. And the school is now measured, or has been measured from the very beginning, in fact, by absenteeism and by how many children attend and don't attend in terms of this legal document of the register. What a big contrast to Summerhill's Pegboard. Yeah? And it's amazing, with the Pegboard, if you don't use your peg, then you can be brought up to the meeting, and you can be fined or get a warning. And if you haven't made your peg yet, then eventually you might be brought up, or you might, and the fine will be simply to make the peg, which most people enjoy doing anyway. And just to remind ourselves of Neil's sense of registers and schools, this is him again. This is again meaning I keep on reading every one of these objects and vlogs, video presentations I normally quote from Dominic's log, his first book. He says in Dominic's log, page 15, "I must confess that I am an atrociously bad disciplinarian. Today Violet Brown began to sing Tipperary," which is a First World War song, I think, to herself when I was marking the registers. I looked up and said, "Why the happiness this morning, Violet?" And she blushed and grinned. I am a poor disciplinarian. I find that normally I am very, very slack. I don't mind if they talk or not. Indeed, if the hum of conversation stops, I feel that something has happened, and I invariably look towards the door to see whether the inspector has arrived. So he loves the children chatting and even singing when he does the register. So, and then I've used the pegboard. In fact, the pegboard that you saw as a part of my workshops at Whitechapel Art Gallery, where we got the children before they looked around the art gallery to create their own pegs, so that we could put it on the wall of the classroom in the art gallery and say they're in the art gallery or they're leaving it. And then they had to quickly, I introduced Summerhill, showed them the wooden pegboard, and then they created their own pegs and put it on in the Whitechapel Art Gallery. and then we went around the art gallery and things, and then when they left, they had to put all their new pegs on out, and then if they wanted to, they could keep their cardboard pegs. So, okay, so that is the pegboard. Thank you very much indeed.